Hey guys, Julius here. I want to make a quick video for you to talk about foreplay, which is something I get asked about a lot. I get questions from guys about how to be good at foreplay and what all the tips and tricks are for getting a woman's juices flowing. And this is great because one of the biggest complaints I hear from women is that men don't spend enough time with foreplay. And in a bit, we'll talk about why foreplay is so important for getting a woman to orgasm. So before we get into all that, first, let's define what exactly foreplay is, and let's also clearly define what our outcome or goal is for foreplay, because in order to be good at anything, you need a clear vision of what the best possible outcome is. When you think of foreplay, you might imagine all the kissing and hugging and rubbing and licking and massaging and all the other fun stuff that happens before sex begins. There's also a lot of things that are happening mentally as well. My informal definition of foreplay is all the mental and physical fun stuff that happens before physical stimulation of the vagina or penis that increases sexual arousal. In order to reach orgasm, a woman must be able to get out of her mind and into the moment, into a high state of arousal that I call orgasmic state. This can be the most difficult part of getting her to orgasm and is oftentimes completely overlooked as part of the equation of great sex. If our goal is to give her full-body squirting orgasms, then the best possible outcome of foreplay, or all the stuff that leads up to sexual stimulation, is to get her to orgasmic state so that she can easily reach orgasm once stimulation begins. Said differently, our goal of foreplay is to get her into the fantasy of the moment, get her very present, and get her highly aroused so that she'll have an easier time letting go to reach orgasm or have multiple orgasms. What turns men on is different from what turns women on, as men are very visual creatures. We see a woman's breasts or butt and we can instantly get aroused and we're ready to stick it in. Women need a little bit more time to become aroused because what turns a woman on is very different from what turns on a man. A woman is turned on more by what she feels and what she imagines. A woman is turned on by your actions, your behavior, your attitude, and your language. What turns on a woman is the context of the situation or the fantasy of being desired and taken by a man whom she deeply respects. When men attempt to forego foreplay and jump right into sex, it leaves her little time to get aroused and into the mental state of arousal required in order to orgasm. Now that doesn't mean you have to always have lengthy foreplay every time before sex. In fact, if you understand this, you can maximize foreplay by getting her highly aroused as quickly as possible so that less foreplay is actually necessary. There's a lot we can talk about when it comes to foreplay. However, for the purpose of this video, I want to talk about 3 key things to include during foreplay that will make the sexual experience absolutely incredible for any woman you're with. The first one is dominance. Women are turned on by dominant men who take charge and lead in the bedroom. When you take the masculine dominant role and communicate that to her through your actions, she will go into her natural feminine submissive state. Women desire to be submissive to a dominant male that they trust and respect. When it comes to arousal, things like dominance and taking the lead in the bedroom can do for a woman what visually seeing a woman's breasts, hips, or butt can do for a man. Guys, all of us are born with the instinct to be dominant, yet cultural conditioning oftentimes covers that up and turns guys into habitual nice guys. This leads to wussy behavior such as approval seeking and continuously giving up power in order to please her. While guys typically attempt supplicating behavior in order to hold on to or gain her affection, this behavior usually has the opposite effect and only serves to turn her off. After a while, she'll leave him for a bad boy, and he's left wondering why she left him after he was so nice to her. He can't see that it's not that she likes a man who treats her badly or any of that. It's that she's turned on by his attitude, the way he carries himself, and most importantly, how he makes her feel. Dominance is something that you convey with your behavior or your attitude rather than just a technique. It's not about being physically strong. Rather, it's about taking charge and leading her in the bedroom with your actions. Okay, so let me give you an example from my life. The other night I was out with a woman I had met recently. We were getting along great. Things were very physical right from the start. So Towards the end of the night, we went back to my place for some wine. When we got back there, I immediately took her by the hand and led her to my room, stood her in front of my bed, put both my hands on her head, and pulled her in for a hard kiss. I moved one of my hands to the back of her hair. I pulled down slowly and firmly as I continued to kiss her. Suddenly, I pulled her head away from me, and I put my hands under her armpits, and I literally picked her up and threw her on my bed. I think you can imagine where things escalated to next. But I will tell you that I was able to give her her first vaginal orgasm. She had never even experienced this type of orgasm from her ex-husband, who she had been married to and had a 5-year relationship with. When I called her the next day, she said, "Oh my God, I can't stop thinking about last night. There's one thing I can't stop thinking about." Now, naturally, as a guy, the first thing that comes to my mind is when I made her G-spot swell up and push me out of her, and she had her first vaginal orgasm. She didn't squirt, but I could tell that she was ready, but just holding back. But anyways, naturally, as a guy, of course, that's the first thing that comes to my mind when she said that there was one thing that she couldn't stop thinking about. But when I called her and asked her what she couldn't stop thinking about, she said, "I can't stop thinking about how you kissed me and threw me on the bed. Once you did that, it was over for me. It was all a blur after that." What I'm trying to point out here is just that little action of taking charge, unapologetically leading her to my bedroom and throwing her on the bed got her massively turned on. This allowed me to give her an orgasm she had never experienced before, whereas she may not have even gotten that far or been able to fully let go mentally had I, given her that same boring experience she would have gotten from most other guys. What stood out for her was not that simply the orgasm, but rather the emotions she felt when I threw her on the bed and throughout the entire experience. Now, that's just a simplified example. There's a lot of things you can do to convey dominance in the bedroom. Even dirty talk is a great way to move her emotionally with your language. Women love dirty talk because it builds up the fantasy in her mind. However, the most important takeaway here is you need to take your dominant masculine role and lead her through an amazing experience. And this is especially important during foreplay as it sets the frame for the entire sexual experience. So dominance and leading in the bedroom is the first one. The second thing to include during foreplay is anticipation. As I said before, women want men to take more time to include foreplay, but along with that, women oftentimes complain that men get too eager and go right for her sensitive spots without letting her get warmed up first. A boring, predictable man sees her boob and goes right for the nipple. A boring, predictable man sees her vagina and immediately starts oral sex and stimulating her clitoris. A boring, predictable man goes inside of her and immediately reaches for the G-spot every time. We don't want to be that boring, predictable guy. In fact, let me be clear about something. Routine and predictability are the killers of your sex life. Women are turned on by men who are unpredictable. Making her anticipate your next move is almost as important, if not more important, than the move that you actually make. When I go down to perform oral sex on a woman, I like to take my time and lick the entire area around her vulva, including her inner thighs, and slowly make my way to her vagina. And I'll get near her clitoris, but I won't stimulate it until she's practically begging for it. By the time I actually start stimulating her clitoris, she'll be so turned on by anticipating my touch that she'll be ready to explode. Same thing with stimulating her with your finger. Don't go inside of her and try to jump right into her G-spot or to her A-spot. Take your time. Softly rub the inner walls of her vagina. Let her become aroused from you just touching her and anticipating what you're going to do next. If you've given her a vaginal orgasm in the past, she'll know what's coming, but take your time. Be unpredictable. Get her to the point where she's begging for it before you give her what she wants. Another way to build anticipation is to text message her and tell her all the naughty things you want to do to her body before you even see her. Start building up the fantasy using your words and your language so that by the time you see her, she'll practically be begging for you to be inside of her. I started a dirty text message conversation in the middle of the day with one particular woman, and things escalated so much that She actually canceled her last 2 clients. She does makeup and hair. And she showed up at my place with nothing but a long coat and panties and bra underneath. She was so turned on and ready for sex, there was literally no foreplay. And this is what I mean when I say to understand that the goal of foreplay is to get her massively turned on. And we can maximize this so that very little foreplay is needed. Using text messages is a great way to build up the fantasy before you even see her, so by the time you're together, she's already so turned on and close to orgasmic state that just the slightest touch can bring her to orgasm. The third thing to include during foreplay is playfulness. Playfulness is as simple as it sounds. I'm talking about being lighthearted and having fun. Playfulness is about building sexual context into any situation. Playfulness is about being a challenge and building up sexual tension in a way that creates lust that needs resolution. Playfulness is the exchange of teasing or playful banter. Playfulness is what flirting is all about. It's about building up sexual tension between you and your partner. This is important because a relationship without sexual tension is just a friendship. Whether we realize it or not, we're constantly projecting our own mental state onto others around us. Your mental state has an enormous effect on the state your woman will go into. If our goal is to get her out of her head and to be more present, then we need to get ourselves there as well. This means never taking things too serious or thinking too much during sexual escalation. It means getting out of our logical thinking zone, which I know can be difficult sometimes. I'm a very logical thinker, so sometimes I have to make a conscious effort to shift out of that state and become more present. Studies have shown that during orgasm, the thinking part of a woman's brain quiets down and there's an absence of logical thought. Women oftentimes have a hard time getting to this state because their minds will interrupt the natural process of letting go with constant chatter or logical thought. Her mental state and ability to let go and stop that chatter will be the biggest variable of whether or not the physical techniques you use will get her to orgasm or not. By making the situation fun and emotionally exciting, it'll make it a lot easier for her to let go and get to the high state of arousal. How you approach giving a woman an orgasm has an enormous impact on her ability to actually let go and have an orgasm. Be playful, be a challenge, move her emotionally with your action, not your logic. Make the situation exciting and passionate, and you'll make a huge impact on her ability to let go and get to orgasmic state, and she'll be able to experience incredible orgasms. So that's 3 great things to include during foreplay to maximize our goal of giving women incredible orgasms. As I mentioned at the beginning, many women complain that men don't spend enough time with foreplay. They just want to jump right into sex. The reason women want more foreplay is because they typically need more time to get highly aroused and into orgasmic state. Becoming more present and giving into the fantasy of the moment will allow her to orgasm. Women might not necessarily articulate it that way, but it's why more foreplay helps women achieve orgasm during intercourse. Remember, if you make a conscious effort to include things like dominance, anticipation, and playfulness, you'll make foreplay and the entire sexual experience more enjoyable for any woman. Now, I hope you enjoyed this video. Go out there, have some fun, and I'll talk to you soon.